the break room, classic film fans. It's tea time for a coffee break. Welcome to our second segment together. Since I last saw you guys on Fashion Friday, our first segment together, told you guys at the end of that video that I was going to bring you something a bit more cinematic next time we meet. And if you listened to my last video on Friday, you heard me talk about The Society, a script that I had written several years ago and had recently picked back up again to produce into a feature film. Well, since that's been postponed, I thought I would start reading so many pages out of the script from beginning to end over the course of time and introduce you to the story itself, what I call a verbal film. I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a background. If you don't follow me on Twitter, be sure to do so. And I also have a Twitter page for The Society, Dominique's The Society, and I will have that pinned below, and you can follow me there. I have written The Society based on a long time passion. I have always been immersed in period pieces, the sets and the clothes and the ton, the way that it makes you feel when you watch a period piece. But, however, it was very quickly known to me that I would never be able to see myself represented in a period piece as a leading character in those same settings and period that I had grown to love. So I thought, why not create my own period piece, my own story, where race isn't a factor? That what if we were all created just human beings from the very beginning of time and carried through life the same way? So came The Society, the script that I had written. So I'm going to be reading pages out of the script to you guys over the course of time. But before we get into that, I'm going to kind of bring you up to date on where I'm at and what's been going on since I had written the script. So the first thing that took place after I had written it, and really as I was writing The Society, was garments. As you guys know, on Fashion Friday, I do a lot of theatrical productions and I've made a lot of theatrical pieces. So sketching, to me, it goes hand in hand with any written word that I come up with. So writing and coming up with the sketches, again, they were interlinked. You couldn't do one without the other, at least the way my process works. The first thing I did was sketch out every character, female leading character's garments, starting with the leading character. And in some cases, the piece came to me before the actual scene did. But as the more and more that I kept writing, the more garments started to come into play. And, I carry my sketchbook with me wherever I go. So it was constantly out. It was constantly something that I was sketching. It was constantly something that I would see just by being out, whether it was something like a bow or a bead or the way that the sun hit a flower. It was endless of things that I create. And when you're talking about period pieces, especially with the women's gowns, it is, for me, or to me, an infinitive imagination that you can have for garments. So that was something really, when I look back on the whole process, as much as I had fun writing it, I probably had more fun coming up with garments for sketches for each character, because the more that I sketched, the more I could identify specifically each character, what she would wear or what he would wear, and it really played the tone with how the scene would come out visually in my mind as I was writing it. In my story, there are 4 leading female characters, which is Victoria, Sydney, who is our heroine, and her 3 best friends, Sarah, Jacqueline, and Josephine. All 4 have a very, very distinctive, different personalities, and each one with their distinctive personalities is what, to me, and hopefully will come across in the story, is what makes them gel so well together. Because where one is lacking one thing, the other one picks it right up, and it makes for a grand camaraderie, if you will. I also have 4 male leading characters with the additional leading male character to Victoria's leading female character, which is Dorian Mallory, who Victoria meets in very strange circumstances. Because as much as it is a period piece, the main factor being that they're living in a world that is not held by race or color, and they're able to coexist without that. And when you take that element away of color and race, we all still have so much in common being human beings. And that was the main point of the society. But in addition to that, there is that love story, that underlining story between Victoria and Dorian, how they meet, why they meet, where they go in their journey and their story together. But, in addition to those 4 female characters, the 4 leading characters outside of Dorian Mallory, I came up with Victoria's brother, younger brother, James Sidney, who is quite a character himself, as he is the type who is doing best he can not to be caught by the marriage reaper, as he calls him, as he calls it, as well as his 3 best friends, Luke, Lev, and Reginald. And just as dynamic as the females are, and their separate independence is the same for the gentlemen, as you will see in their first encounter, their first sit down together, where we get to see them all at a table at one time. It makes for a very interesting conversation, a very interesting pack. And they have titled themselves the Boudoir Beaus, which has its own backstory. Just want to give you guys just a little bit of the characters, a little bit of the background, a little bit of the story. If you are new to my channel, if you're new to my page, just to set it up for you, so when we do get into reading the script for the society, you know what's going on. I'm going to also show you a few of the garments that I have sketched out in the other room, in my workroom. And if you haven't checked out the animatic reel, which I've done an animatic reel and I have done a pitch trailer, both on the society, which you can see on my website, which I will also have pinned in the video, on this video below. I will have the link to my website, the link to the official Twitter page for the society, as well as I'll supply links to my other outlets that I share my work, such as Vimeo, so you guys can get real well-rounded with the story and the journey as we go along. It is, out of all the scripts that I have written, because stories are endless. There's so many stories to tell. There's so many things to talk about. And I felt like, especially with the society and everything that I've written so far, that the only medium, the only place where we can be completely free, completely open to an endless amount of possibility, that anything can actually happen and be believable if you execute it in such a way, is cinema. Books and cinema have no bound. And from books we get cinema, and sometimes from cinema we get books, we get the plays, we get a world of endlessness that can only be believable in the films. And I think that helps us in reality, in everyday life, to have that hope, or that wishful thinking of positivity that comes out of watching certain films. Films that stick with you and hold with you and inspire you. As for me with the society, the single most film that inspired me more than all the Jane Austens that I've read, all the period piece books that I fell in love with growing up, and that I still love, that I still reread and get reintroduced to, was Marie Antoinette with Norma Shearer and Tyrone Power. I always feel like I'm the only one who loves the film as much as I do, and I know about, well, the historical facts, and this is different, and I'm not knocking any of the other adaptations. I have seen the other adaptations as well, and I'm not knocking any of those. But for me, Norma Shearer, she does something quite special with Marie Antoinette, especially when you get to the ending. Emotional, the way that she connected with the character and how she let out what she was going through, especially with her son. It's an emotional moment, and she carries you through this whole film of, hours, and you're drawn in, and she takes you there, and her chemistry for me with Tyrone Power is just an extra level of bringing to you a cinematic experience. But seeing that film and the sets, of course, I mean, it's MGM, home of the stars. Nothing is off limits when it comes to MGM. You get the big sets, you get the stars, you get the glitz, you get the glamour, you get everything that, I love with an MGM film, how they're going to put on a show, right? And of course, this can only be done on a sound stage. This is not anything you're going to see on a regular stage. Trust me, I have tried it. It's funny, every time I won't want to write a theatrical production and want to put on a theatrical production, I'm thinking not only of all the musicals, even Fox musicals with Carmen Miranda, childhood inspiration, Carmen Miranda. I remember watching her as a kid on the weekends or during the summer when I could stay up late when I was in school, and my mom watched Springtime in the Rockies with me. And that's a movie memory, as we talked about on Friday. But as big as those films are, whenever I'm writing something or I'm coming up with something, I'm like, oh yes, like Eleanor Powell, and I'm thinking of all these acts and all the glitter and all the steps, like as in Ziegfeld Girl when they're walking down the steps, and I use all of that, and I'm like, oh, we've got to get the big props, and most of them, I end up having to make myself, because things of the imagination or such, sometimes you just can't find that anywhere other than your own craftiness, depending on your local or abroad craft store where you order stuff in, and there is nothing more satisfying for me when I get my box of Swarovski crystals that I have ordered and the box arrives. The box arrives and I'm like, yes. So anyhow, as you can tell, I get very enthusiastic. I get very passionate when talking about cinema, when talking about books, when talking about garments, because, and music, they all really are related to one another. It's all one family. And for me, I think my mind is like a musical. My mind runs in a musical fashion, from elements from all bits apart. It's like all working at the same time, and like, oh, this is how it should sound, and this is how it should look. These are the kind of colors that should be used, and this is the kind of outfit that should be worn, and this is the kind of backdrop that it should be set in. I mean, it's all working together in my mind. I don't know if that has anything to do with being a Gemini, that my twins are working together and both of their minds have minds of their own, and then it's just like it's a musical going on upstairs. So anyhow, hope that I was able to kind of introduce to you a little bit about the workings of the society, what you're going to be introduced to as the weeks go on with it. And until then, I will see you on Friday for another Fashion Friday, a little Fashion Friday, a little cinema coffee, all in one piece. So until then, be safe, be well, be healthy, and stay home. See you Friday. A bientôt.